Senator Blumenthal is recognized. The question and take the gavel.
As one of your Democratic friends, in Senator Klobuchar's absence, I will ask some questions and then pass it to Senator Durbin if she hasn't returned in the meantime. Let me ask you, Mr. McMullen, when Kroger and Albertsons announced the merger on October 14th, I think it was, you said, I think you were quoted correctly as saying, importantly, the merger secures union jobs, and we will continue to work with local unions across America to serve our community. Both Kroger's and Albertsons stores have unionized workforces, according to the UFCW International. More than half of Kroger stores and a majority of Albertsons stores are members, and yet multiple unions have said they're opposed to this transaction, particularly expressing their concern over the possibility of closures. So my question to you is, how do you plan to secure, and will you commit to secure, jobs and work with local unions?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And as Mr. Shakaran mentioned earlier, we are in active conversations with the unions, both UFCW and Teamsters. We view the unions across the U.S. are incredibly important partners, and we will work together with the unions. Obviously, a successful business in terms of taking care of customers is what provides job security. And what we find is our associates are the main ingredients of creating that connection. And it's an incredibly important relationship because customers are shopping at stores for individual people. So it's something that a successful business is what creates as job security. And we believe we'll have an incredibly successful business that creates job security. And we will be, I believe, the largest retail union employer as well. And by far the majority of our competitors are non-union in today's environment.
Will you commit to maintaining neutrality if non-union employees choose to unionize?
Yeah, and we've always, we call our employees associates, and we believe it's our associates' choice in terms of what they decide to do.
And you will commit to being neutral?
And we continue to support our associates on making those decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Needler, I was particularly interested in your testimony because I know a lot of independent grocers across Connecticut, family businesses like yours, face the challenges that you've described to the committee in your testimony. And we have dominant grocery retailers in Connecticut, most often Stop & Shop and ShopRite, as well as Walmart and other big box stores that compete with independent grocers. I've heard from time to time about how the largest grocery sellers use their buyer power, in quotes, buyer power, to effectively demand special treatment, from privileged access to products to price advantages. And I know it'll be no surprise to you to hear from me, but I was surprised to learn that even before the pandemic, independent grocers sometimes resorted to buying products from Costco because it gets such steep discounts that its retail prices are actually lower than the wholesale prices that an independent grocer like you and like many in Connecticut can obtain. And I know that this problem was only exacerbated by the supply chain disruptions and shortages resulting from the pandemic. I know that you haven't taken a position. You're agnostic on the merger, so I'm not going to ask you to comment on it specifically. But in your experience, how important is it that your large competitors' size their ability, use their ability, exploit it, their buyer power to achieve special treatment? And how would you expect the combined firms' increased buying power to affect their smaller competitors in the market?
Thank you, sir, for your question. Look, we compete on service, quality, assortment, overall shopping experience, but the number one variable that a consumer has to decide on is price. And if the largest can exert so much power to get terms, conditions, in many cases, you hear that Walmart doesn't even pay for the product till it's been sold. That is the complete opposite for me. I'm paying for it at the back door in some cases, and whether it sells or not. So you have access to capital that they will have access to capital that the small independent won't get. They will have access to products in sizes and in cost that we'll never get to see. And if that is used inappropriately, ultimately the consumer will choose with their pocketbook, and that will not end well in the long term. I think if you look at it on a time continuum, what happens is that they will continue to exert the pressure for the suppliers, the CPGs. They'll get better costs and consequently be able to run more volume, and then consequently be able to run lower margins, ultimately putting that pressure on the independent who have already higher costs and lower volumes, which takes the rest of the P&L a little bit out of whack. So at the end of the day, those folks having more buyer power, if it is not controlled through transparency and enforcement of RPA, I mean, there's already guardrails there. All we're asking is, hey, let's just keep those guardrails there. If there's consolidation, fine, but let's just make sure that we all have a level playing field. And say, if you're going to buy in similar quantities, and I think people ask oftentimes, what are similar quantities? Study after study show that, if you're buying in truckloads, your buying is almost as efficient for the supplier as you can. I'm supplied by 2, 3 multi-billion-dollar wholesalers that, they're buying it very efficiently. But for some reason, we're still not able to get it at the rates that some of these power buyers are.
Keep the guardrails and enforce them.
That's the idea.
Thank you.